Hi guys, welcome to the Wrestling Retrospective, and in today's video I'm doing my review of AEW x New Japan Forbidden Door 2025. Starting off the show, we had Adam Copeland and Christian Cage defeat Killswitch and Kip Sabian. And yeah, this was a fine match. There was definitely a lack of synergy between both teams. I feel like Copeland and Cage, though they probably are training together and stuff for this match, they didn't really have the fluidity I thought, or at least that people thought that they were going to have for this match. It didn't affect the match too badly that both teams were really on the same page, but yeah, I just expected a little bit more from Edge and Christian. There were stagnant points, but again, I said it didn't affect the match too badly. I liked how Christian Cage didn't want to be in the ring with Killswitch near the start. Obviously, Christian is aware of how much of a threat Killswitch is, and yeah, it just made a lot of sense, like through the story, why you want to do that. But the one thing I didn't understand was Kip's issue with Killswitch. You know, throughout, like, he's shouting at him and tagging himself in and having like a real issue with Killswitch, which I'm aware that like the tag team synergy of the patriarchy was regularly either Nick and Killswitch or Nick and Kip. But yeah, it doesn't make sense why Kip has an issue with Killswitch, especially when the reason that Killswitch hasn't been around is because of illness/injury. So yeah, that really didn't make much sense. I assume it's probably to put some emphasis on a potential face turn for Killswitch, or who might go back to being Luchasaurus. But yeah, it just didn't make any sense because there was like no explanation as to why Kip is acting that way. And obviously, Killswitch was a last-minute addition to the match because of Nick's injury. So I'd like them to kind of explain that probably on Dynamite or Collision at some point, because yeah, it didn't make any sense for me. As for Cage and Copeland, they were decent. I think there's a lot of room for improvement for them as a team. Obviously, we know that they are tag team specialists, not just with each other, but with other partners as well. So we know that they can get that great tag team wrestling down. I assume they just need to spend more time together, essentially, or the story is the fact that they're not perfect yet, and that's kind of the point. But if they're going to take on FTR, they're going to have to be a lot better than what they were here, in my opinion. But yeah, I'd say the finish was probably the best part. The pop-up spear was a really good way to finish, and Christian Cage getting the pin as well was also very good, as this is the Christian Cage issue part of their agreement of coming back together again. But yeah, this was arguably the weakest match on the card, I would have said. I would have probably not had this open the night, but as I said, it was a decent match. I just expected a bit more out of this one, and this lack of storyline between Kip and Luchasaurus, or Killswitch, really confused me throughout this one. After that, we had Kyle Fletcher defeat Hiromu Takahashi to retain the TNT Championship, and this was great. Personally, I absolutely loved this match. To be fair, I thought this match probably should have started the show, and then they put the tag team match that started the show on here, because obviously the second match of the card is kind of a dead place, and a place that isn't very good most of the time, so it kind of would have fit a lot better there. But yeah, this was a absolutely great way to start the night, like when we get through to like the good wrestling, if that makes sense. But though he's not had many defenses so far, this was Kyle Fletcher's best title defense to date. I thought he absolutely killed it in this one. We kind of got the sense of the Kyle Fletcher that defeated Will Ospreay and had the absolute classics with Will. But yeah, neither man really held back. Fletcher controlled for the most part, but when Takahashi took over the match, he beat the crap out of Kyle Fletcher. You know, the highlight for me being it seemed like Kyle Fletcher was going for either a suplex or a brainbuster on the apron. Takahashi reversed it into the DDT and just planted his face on the apron. It looked awful. Like, to a point where I thought that maybe he would have had like almost a broken nose out of it, but upon the replay it showed that he kind of turned his head just before the impact. But yeah, that was brutal. But yeah, it was a fantastic performance from both. Takahashi had a great performance throughout, but Kyle Fletcher is really coming into his own as TNT champion, and I really hope they keep the title on him for a while. My assumption is, because they announced on this show that they're going back to Australia in February, that he would probably keep it past then, you know, so then they kind of have that Australian representative on that show. But yeah, no, this was an absolutely fantastic match. One of the better matches on the card, in my opinion, and yeah, if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. But yeah, I'd say real star-making performance for Kyle Fletcher, and hopefully he has more matches like this throughout his TNT title reign. After that, we saw Mercedes Moné successfully retain the TBS Championship in a 4-way match, defending against Mozilla, Persephone and Alex Windsor in a match that was very enjoyable. I enjoyed this a lot more than I was expecting. There wasn't really a moment in this match where there was like nothing was happening. There was at least 2 people in the ring doing stuff throughout, which is obviously really good. There was a very high octane pace to the match, even with like the size of Boozilla. Like even she was running around and kind of doing a lot of really good offense. It made everything a lot more enjoyable. Speaking of Boozilla, she had a very, very good performance. She looked like an absolute force in there, and I wouldn't be surprised if AEW brought her in again for some stuff. Persephone showed out again whenever she's given the opportunities to wrestle on AEW or Ring of Honor. She has been really, really showing out, and yeah, just someone I have kept in the back of my mind as someone who could be really good, and someone that AEW should really look at bringing in when and if her CMLL contract runs out, because you know she is a great talent from what I've seen. Like there hasn't been a match that she's been in that I thought was bad, so she's been great. And Alex Windsor as well looked very good too. She was using more traditional wrestling and submissions to get the advantage in the match, but the only, like, the overwhelming thing was that Mercedes Moné was never losing here. The title never felt like it was in jeopardy. You know, even when it looked like Alex Windsor could have got the win, it never really felt as if she was going to. The roll-up made a lot of sense. It made the title defense look like more of a Moné survived this fatal 4-way rather than, you know, she had a clear retain. But yeah, I'd probably say that Moné was also the least involved in the match, which again makes kind of sense with her character. She wants to stay away and out of trouble, so then the risk of her losing a title then gets lowered. But yes, it's not the best Moné match for the TBS Championship, but it wasn't bad either. She's also had worse matches. Britt Baker last year, all in. But yeah, I expected a little bit more out of this one from Mercedes Moné, but everyone else in the match looked very good. And yeah, nothing really. I mean, okay, I'm not going to say there's nothing bad to say because of the whole title jeopardy thing, but yeah, it was just a decent match to have in the middle of the card. Following that, we had Zack Sabre Jr. defeat Nigel McGuinness to retain the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. And yeah, this was a kind of wrestlers wrestling match. The standard of which these two hold each other and hold themselves to as far as traditional wrestling goes is just great. But personally, it isn't like the kind of style I enjoy most of the time. I can kind of find these matches kind of tedious, and there was moments where I found myself getting a little bit distracted, but I feel like that's kind of my own personal preference rather than how good the match was. You know, as the match goes overall, it was very good, and I can appreciate the fact that these two are like very comfortable doing that style of wrestling, and yeah, it is very, very impressive. As I said, it's literally just a personal preference thing why I didn't prefer this over other matches on the card. But compared to his matches, Zack Sabre Jr., compared to his matches with... Oh, no, sorry. I'm getting confused on my notes. Forgive me. But compared to Nigel's matches with Danielson and the Lee Moriarty, he felt way more... or at least he seemed way more comfortable in this match compared to, especially the one with Lee Moriarty. But yeah, this is like him right in his real house against someone who pretty much, I wasn't surprised, like looked at his matches for inspiration for the way he wrestles in Zack Sabre Jr. But however, like the last title match, there was never a chance that the title was changing hands here. The jeopardy kind of wasn't there. We knew that Zack Sabre Jr. wasn't going to be losing the IWGP World title to Nigel McGuinness, which kind of took away from it slightly. But, you know, it kind of is what it is. I have no idea why Daniel Garcia was out there. Like, it really didn't make sense. He didn't really play much of an impact in the match. He got in Zack Sabre Jr.'s face a little bit and helped with the ropes. But that was like it. I was expecting a little bit more from him. But maybe it's just the narcissistic wrestling fan and the WWE fan within me who felt like he was maybe going to turn heel or something. But now it was the case of he was just there playing manager. Which, I mean, to be fair, Daniel Garcia should be in a lot bigger place than just playing manager. But yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. again was great. Like, he doesn't really have a big title match and like a big dream match almost where it wasn't going to be good. You know, he is arguably one of the best wrestlers in the world right now. But yeah, overall it was a great match, just not all of it was for me. But again, like, to come from an unbiased perspective, it was a very good match. After that, we had Brody King and Bandido defeat FTR and the Hurt Syndicate to become the new World Tag Team Champions. In, like, first of all, what was the biggest shock of the show? It wasn't quite of the night. We'll get to the biggest shock of the night, Heatwave. But yeah, I was one of those people who completely wrote off Bandido and Brody King. I assumed that Brody King was probably going to take the pin here because of the backstage stuff between the Hurt Syndicate and FTR. But overall, the match was really good. 2 starting in the ring is stupid. I hate it every time. I'm going to mention it every time until they stop doing it because it doesn't make any sense. And it's kind of makes the match start really slowly. And you're kind of, I mean, from my point of view, I always wait for the match to then start breaking down, to then start taking proper opinion on it, because that's when the match starts getting really good. But yeah, it was contested fairly evenly. Like, I was surprised that, like, the Hurt Syndicate weren't controlling for the most part, as that's kind of been how their matches have been for the majority of their title reign. But no, all 3 teams looked really good here. They all had good showings and like a moment in the spotlight each, and quite evenly. It was kind of like a match of 3 halves. Well, it was kind of 3 halves. That's interesting. But like 4 quarters where it was like the first start for there. Words. The first part was the tagging in and out, kind of getting to the part where it breaks all down, and then like all 3 got a moment in the spotlight, if you will. But yes, this was fine. I would have liked to see a little bit more interaction between Brody King and Bobby Lashley. I feel like a singles match between them should come up on Dynamite over the next few weeks, and if they do that, I think it'll be an awesome match. Then we had Ricochet and the Gates of Agony get involved, which didn't make much sense until afterwards, where they kind of showed an exclusive where Ricochet's targeting them because they essentially embarrassed him when he was thinking about joining the Hurt Syndicate. But yeah, I mean, like, we kind of knew that the Hurt Syndicate were going to lose because of the whole politicking thing and the whole backstage reports, even though it's all allegedly and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the finish was very weird. Like, the way I viewed it in the moment was that I can't remember if it was Brody or Bandido that got the pin. I think it was Bandido. But Cash Wheeler, no, Dax. Sorry, I'm all confused. It was last night and it was the next afternoon. But Dax was being pinned, and then the pin suddenly stopped, but Cash went in to break it up, but I assume the idea was he was supposed to not get there quite in time, which then lost them the match. But then the pin stopped and then started again. Obviously, Dax's shoulders must have been off the mat, or they must have just over-rotated on the pin. So then Cash was like there and close enough to break it up, but then he didn't. It all looked very scrappy and very off. Now, again, it could just be the case of timing was a bit off, or there was this whole thing about it being an elimination tag, and then suddenly it wasn't, which was weird as well. Apparently I didn't see it, but apparently there was a graphic that said it was an elimination match, and then it suddenly wasn't. Like, yeah, it's kind of weird, like, how this all ended. I mean, fair enough making Brody and Bandido the World Tag Team Champions, whether they were supposed to eliminate FTR and then Hurt Syndicate was supposed to come back out and win the titles back, I guess, maybe. But yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with this, especially if Brody and Bandido weren't supposed to win, or maybe they were. Or I think it's all very weird. Like, there's just a lot of, like, backstage goings on, which seem to be playing a part in this, and maybe the finish going wrong didn't help. But yeah, just this whole thing has like a really weird feel about it now. Following that, we had Kazuchika Okada defeat Swerve Strickland to retain the Unified Championship. And I mean, this was a fantastic match, but like, would you expect anything less out of Okada and Swerve, really? But yeah, the fluid motions of Swerve are very fun to watch. You know, the way he gets into a suplex with rolling through, just like, I don't know, it's just everything about his movements within the ring is so seamless and so well thought out that it just comes so naturally to him at this point and just makes him, again, one of the best in the world right now. But yeah, the pace in the match was really good. They played into the knee injury of Swerve. They did it well, but they didn't quite overdo it like maybe sometimes people do. The injury of Swerve and his knee kind of got brought upon us very out of nowhere. It kind of felt like... it felt a bit like when they brought up Seth Rollins' broken back against Shinsuke Nakamura, and it was just like, okay, so he's like suddenly injured out of nowhere. But they didn't quite play on it as heavy as that feud did. But yeah, it worked really well. Swerve doing the house call out of nowhere twice in different stages of the match, I thought was very well done, and maybe could have won him the match at any point. I feel like he should do that more often within his matches. Okada, again, the only real complaint I have about Okada is that he goes for the Rainmaker way too often, so people are constantly ducking out of it, and it actually makes the move look... it kind of makes it look worth less, if that makes sense. Because, you know, if everyone's reversing it until you finally get it, I can get like how it makes it look strong when you finally get it, but you kind of look silly going for it 3 or 4 times in a row and you're not getting it, if that makes sense. I hope it does. But yeah, it was a great win for Okada. I would say it's probably his biggest offense to date. I know that he beat Kenny Omega for it All In, but with Omega's kind of recent run, I'd say that getting a win over Swerve is actually more important and more impressive than getting a win over Omega right now, which I know might be controversial, but right now in the current state of AEW, I feel like Swerve stock is worth more than Kenny Omega. So yeah, I mean, don't come after me for that, it's just my personal opinion. But yeah, said after the match we saw Okada absolutely destroy his knee within the steel steps with a steel chair, which I thought was, made perfect sense, kind of writes off Swerve for a little bit if they want to go that way. But then somebody spanked me. I thought he was dead as we saw the return of Wardlow, which was very surprising. I kind of heard little inklings that maybe Wardlow will show up, especially after the American Gladiator thing's finished. So we saw Miz show up on AEW. We saw the Miz show up on WWE recently, so he's kind of back. So it made sense that Wardlow is now free to come back, and thank God he's back. But aligning with the Don Callis family is very interesting, and I'll try and put a screenshot on the screen somewhere. So I saw a picture of the people that are in the Don Callis family right now. My God, this is a awesome team. Like, they are a absolute unit right now, and they have some real, like, great talent in there as well. You think about Okada and Wardlow alone are great, but then you put in Takeshita, who's arguably going to be one of the best in the world one day and has just won the G1 Climax. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was very disappointed that he didn't get a match on this show. You've also got Josh Alexander, who's great. You've got RPG Vice, who are a well-known tag team. Brian Cage is in there, even though we never see him anymore. Lance Archer's a great muscle to have. Hechisero's a fantastic talent. And I feel like there's someone else I'm missing. Oh, Carl Fletcher, obviously the TNT champion. So yeah, like an absolute brilliant group to have in AEW right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're holding all the gold at some point, because that's what I would be doing, because they are a fantastic group. And Don Callis, obviously being one of the most vile and hated people in AEW as well, helps that fact of just how good they are. So yeah, I look forward to seeing like where all this goes with the Don Callis family, because right now I'm a really big fan of them because they have some serious talent in there. Following that, we had Toni Storm defeat Athena for the AEW Women's World Championship, and this was a very Toni Storm style match. And what I mean by that is the fact that Athena controlled for, or at least what felt like, about 60 to 70% of the match. She had Toni on the back foot for like the majority of it, and yet Toni Storm kind of got back into the match and ended up getting the win. Now, normally I'm just like, oh well, this is a really one-sided match or whatever, but this happened with Mercedes Moné at All In, this happened with Megan Bayne at Dynasty, and it's happened multiple times since then, and it's kind of a unique dynamic to have for a champion, because you can kind of look at it in two ways, or at least one of two ways, which is either the champion makes the challenger look very weak by the fact that the challenger cannot get the job done, but I've worded that right. Sorry, I'm trying to read my list at the same time. But yeah, it hurts the challenger because they can't quite get the job done with Toni, so it makes them look kind of weak. Or you could look at it as Toni is making her challenger look strong in defeat. Now for me, I go with the latter. I feel like this makes Athena look very good and shows that the ROH Women's Champion can go head to head with the AEW Women's Champion, and they're holding like the same level of kind of, like, I don't know, the same level of abilities within each other. It's just that Toni Storm happened to get the better of it this time. But I can understand, again, why people might be frustrated with how Toni Storm matches go, with the fact that she is losing for the majority of the match, but then she ends up getting the win, and it comes across as very, like, I want to say like almost comes across very Super Cena almost, which isn't a great way to put it, but it's the only thing that's popping into my head right now. But yeah, I said overall the match was good. Like, I feel like both of them were very well done. Athena looked, as I said, very good in defeat. Shows that she will fit right into AEW once she's here full time and kind of has dropped the ROH Women's World Championship, which, to be fair, at this point could be never. She is the forever Women's Champion after all. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it was good, don't get me wrong. Like, I have zero, like I said, the match is, I don't know how to put it without coming across like a bit of a dick, but like, I don't know, I just expected a little bit more out of this one. I expected the match to be better fought and evenly contested, which again wasn't the case, but it is a very weird dynamic to have for Toni Storm as a world champion, to be like losing for the majority of their match and then have her get the win. It's starting to not sit with me quite right, because it doesn't look great from a champion's point of view. After that, we had Hangman Page successfully retain the AEW World Championship against MJF, and for me, this was match of the night. These two worked so well together, and yeah, this match was never not going to be good. Again, very similar to Okada and Swerve. But yeah, the pacing throughout was really good. Their transitional wrestling to start the match was really good, and then it kind of got into more big impact plays into the middle, and then became very scrappy near the end. The only real issue I had, and it's only a slight issue, was the title will change hands if Hangman gets disqualified. Like, that only makes sense if you make it very clear, but the fact that Hangman used the table and he did the dead eye to MJF through a table at ringside, that to me is a disqualification. He used a foreign object, and Hangman should have lost at that point, surely. But then at the same time, in AEW, they do show a lot of referee leniency, which, again, I can understand, especially when it's a world title match. I get it, but they need to kind of make that very clear, especially like using commentary for that kind of thing. But like I said, it didn't ruin the match in any kind of point. It's just a very confusing point, because then MJF used the table as well just afterwards, and also MJF set up the table, so does that mean that it's okay to use because Hangman used it and MJF set it up? Like, it's just little minute details like that would massively help these matches, so then there isn't any confusion, or maybe there wasn't any confusion and I'm just looking too much into it. But yeah, I did think that MJF was going to execute the contract straight after the match, especially with the fact of how desperate he got during the match, and like his facial expressions especially were very good to show like how desperate he was to win. And then afterwards in the media scrum, Tony Khan announced that to execute your contract you have to give at least a week's notice, which I think is a bad idea. The whole point of, like, I suppose it's supposed to be very similar to Money in the Bank, right, where you can kind of get a title match whenever you want. The whole appeal of Money in the Bank, especially having the briefcase, is that you can cash it in at any point, at any place, at any time. You don't know when it's going to come. The fact that they're making them cash it, essentially execute the contract a week before, at least a week's notice before, is kind of shit, because now we kind of have a week to prepare for it, and the champion has a week to prepare, so the title isn't in as much jeopardy when the contract is executed, which is something I'm not a big fan of. And yeah, I get, like, he said it's because of advertising and stuff, and I feel like it's just a brief way to come away from the WWE side of things, but yeah, it's not great, and I don't like that rule. But again, it's just little minute things that kind of I didn't like, and obviously that had nothing to do with the match. But yeah, I'm very curious to see who Hangman faces next. I assumed that if MJF got the win, he was going to face Bobby Lashley, and because I thought that maybe MJF set Ricochet in the Gates of Agony on the Hurt Syndicate, but clearly that wasn't the case. But yeah, I look forward to seeing who he faces next. So really, Hangman can have a good match with anybody. But I said no one who's really right now an obvious choice for him as a title contender. I'm also very curious to see what MJF does next away from the title picture, especially if they want to maybe bring him away from the title picture with his contract for a bit and then bring him back in on a future date. But I said it was a very, very good match. I said it was definitely my match of the night. I very much enjoyed it. But yeah, just little minute details kind of confused me a little bit. But that's just, again, personal rather than anything against the match. The match I absolutely loved. And finally, in the main event, we had the 10-man Lights Out Steel Cage match. And yeah, this is an interesting one. I didn't dislike the match, but it wasn't great either. Like, I was expecting a lot more out of this one. I expected it to be like one of the absolute shit show, bloody, crazy matches that we normally get out of AEW, and it kind of wasn't, like, to a degree. Unless your name's Darby Allin. But yeah, it was just like really weird, like for me anyway. I thought that the setup for the cage was really good. I like how it wasn't massively tall, but it was really wide, so then you could easily get like 10 people around ringside and stuff. Because the one thing I was worried about, as I said in my predictions, was 10 people in the ring surrounded by a cage would just be too much, and you know they wouldn't have much movement within the match, which luckily they kind of very quickly solved the answer to. And it was very good. It kind of reminded me of how New Japan do steel cage matches when they're in like groups. So the United Empire versus Bullet Club match where they had a steel cage just before Ospreay left is like a good example of how that was. But as far as like this match goes, first of all, this would have been a lot better if it was Blood and Guts. Like, I don't understand why we haven't done Blood and Guts this year, unless they do it at maybe All Out, which I've seen a few people suggest that the women could do as well, especially with like the pre-show match with like Willow and Statlander, and then you've got Triangle and Madness and Megan Bayne and stuff. And I'd love to see those guys go at it at Blood and Guts. But yeah, this would have been ideal for Blood and Guts. I don't know why they left it for this event. Tanahashi shouldn't have been anywhere near this match. He did barely anything in this match. He came in and got the win and got the winning fall. But yeah, he did like the minimal amount he could have done, and they should have just, personally, as I said in my predictions, I would have had him face Kyle Fletcher, and then maybe had someone else come in and join Team Ospreay. I'm not sure who, but yeah, it just felt very weird having Tanahashi in this one. He was definitely the outlier in this one. Yeah, respect to Darby Allin. Holy shit, that guy. Not only for the table spot that he took with Gabe Kidd, which again, respect to Gabe Kidd, that looked like an awful spot, but a spot that we kind of see a lot in ladder matches, so it wasn't massively concerning. The fork in the ear was awful. Like, you know, this one thing to have, which is the straight example I came with, which was Hardy and Randy Orton inside Hell in a Cell with the screwdriver in the ear. That was awful just as a thing. But to stab his ear and have essentially Darby bleeding out via the ear and stuff was grim. And I would say that that is worse than the fork stabbing that Hangman and Moxley have done in their Texas Death matches. Yeah, it looked awful. I was cringing all over the place. The very fun spot, the callback with the Bucks, with the gummy bears in the sack when they wanted like the worst, most diabolical weapons in there, and it was sweets. I thought it was funny, but again, I would have liked to see thumbtacks as well used within the match, and a complete lack of barbed wire, apart from the table that we saw halfway through the event under the ring was fine, but again, it wasn't like used as much as I thought. The only people that really bled in the match was Ospreay, Moxley, and Darby. I don't think anyone else bled, which was, again, I wasn't quite expecting. When it's a lights-out steel cage match, you kind of expect everyone to have been bleeding. But again, it was fine. For me, the heels probably should have won. But then, you know, when half the babyface team is injured, it doesn't make the match look great anyway, and it's the fact that we knew that they were injured going into it, again, kind of took away, because we knew they weren't going to take as many risks. Like, we knew Darby was going to take a risk no matter what, because he's Darby Allin, but all the other risks were taken by the heels, which, yeah, I mean, as I said, they probably should have won, but they gave the win to, I assume, this is just my guess, is they had Tanahashi get the winning pinfall, because he's obviously retiring at the end of at the start of next year. And also, Will Ospreay's going away soon, so, well, probably from now. So then they were having like a send-off to him. So, yeah, I kind of get why they gave the babyfaces the win, but they should never have won this match. Yeah, I'd say, again, it could have been a lot better. Like, a lot better. But, you know, it is what it is. Writing Will off made the most sense after the match. Obviously, he was attacked by the Death Riders. And then everyone on the babyface team, including the Ops that came down, looked like absolute imbeciles, because they essentially shut the cage. So the Death Riders, and I think it was just the Death Riders actually at this point, they shut the cage and they locked it. Oh no, the Bucks as well. They locked the cage, and that was it. No one could get in, so they were like hammering at the thing. I think there was a fan footage thing where Kota Ibushi's just punching the fuck out of the cage, and then he like looks at his hands because they're hurting. It was quite funny, but everyone is made to look like a complete idiot because none of them started climbing the cage. Like, I think Will Hobbs did, and then Yuta used a kendo stick to get him off. But there's like, what, 8 people at the outside? I think they could have surrounded the whole cage and then climbed in all together, and they wouldn't have had. There's no way the Death Riders could have stopped them all. So they could have saved Will, but I get why they didn't. It's just one of those things where, like, if you bring logic into it, then Will shouldn't have been taken out because the babyfaces could have got to him. But yeah, they looked so dumb then. It was kind of funny in a way. But yes, Will Ospreay obviously going away is awful. I love Will Ospreay. He's like my favourite AEW wrestler right now. And yeah, it is a bit of a shame. But my guess is he will be out until next April. He will then return for the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, win the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, go on to All In to face the world champion, and win the world championship at All In next year, which I'm hoping to go to, which will be ideal. Because I've been waiting for Will Ospreay to win the world championship at All In since last year. But yeah, that's the way I can see Ospreay's return going. I feel like he'll be out for the rest of the year and probably post I want to say post WrestleMania, but that's obviously not this company. But yeah, I'd say it'll be around Owen Hart Foundation tournament times where Ospreay will return. I think, as I said, I'm just speculating, but that's my guess. So then they can give him like this massive babyface hero's welcome into the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. It wouldn't surprise me if he was the Joker going into it, and then he ends up winning the whole thing and then getting a championship at Wembley or All In if they're doing Wembley. But yeah, I said the cage match was a bit of a disappointment. All the babyfaces look like an idiot to end the show. But yeah, I do hope Will Ospreay's going to be okay and that he'll be back for All In next year because I want to see him wrestle live. So those are my thoughts and opinions on AEW X New Japan X Stardom X CMLL Forbidden Door. Do put down below your thoughts in the comments below. We can have a good discussion about it and what you thought of pretty much everything on the show. I'm very interested to see what people's thought on the steel cage match was, as well as kind of what you think is going to happen with Will Ospreay going forward and where you think he's probably going to return and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a fine show. I thought it was a bit of a slow start apart from Kyle Fletcher and Takahashi, who absolutely ripped it up. But yeah, I said overall I feel like it's not the best pay-per-view they put on this year, but it definitely wasn't the weakest either, especially like the last few matches was really good. Hangman and MJF absolutely killed it, so did Okada and Swerve. Very interested to see how they do Wardlow's return, and hopefully they don't fumble him again. But you say, yeah, do put on the comments below anything you want to talk about. Do like the video if you enjoyed it. Do share it as well if I would be much appreciated. And do subscribe. There is a lot of stuff coming up as well. There is obviously this review here. There's a review of Heatwave coming up tomorrow. There's possibly another Steel City Slamboree podcast coming up as well, covering again Forbidden Door and Heatwave, as well as coverage of WWE's Clash in Paris even, as well coming on the channel. So lots of content coming up once again, but of course I upload every other day, so a lot of stuff coming up. So yeah, do subscribe if you enjoy this kind of wrestling content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.